Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. Today I wanted to give you a very important look at a card that I think is single-handedly warping the Master Duel metagame, and that's going to be K9-17 Izuna. So you're probably already very familiar with this card. For those who somehow aren't, this is part of the new K9 archetype, and while it is of course seeing play in dedicated K9 strategies, it's also seeing play outside of that as a general sort of hand trap effect, because in just about any deck you can slot in 3 copies of K9-17 Izuna and 1 copy of K9-00 Lupus into the main deck, as well as any number of rank 5s that you want to summon during your opponent's turn, or during your turn potentially as well, into the extra deck. Some of the more common rank 5s are Valen, Ripper, and Tiras, but we'll talk a little bit more about your actual targets here in a moment. But when it comes to Izuna, I really can't overstate enough just how impactful this card has been to the current metagame. Because of course, Izuna states that during the main phase, if your opponent has activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard this turn, you can special summon this card from your hand. And obviously, again, if it's normal or special summoned, you dump the Lupus effect to revive itself with the same condition that your opponent has activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard this turn. And then you go into your rank 5, and again, that could be Valen to turn a card face down. It could be Tiras to set up a sort of towers-like monster, because Tiras can't be destroyed by card effects, and whatever you summon with Lupus, as long as it's got a material, Lupus rather, as a material, then it can't be targeted either. Another option, of course, is the K9 Ripper, which can negate monster effects in the hand or graveyard. I think when it comes to these options, you'll be picking 2 of these 3 for your extra deck, for most decks that are using the K9 engine just as a hand trap, right? Again, just the Izuna, Lupus, and then these. I'm personally a little bit partial to Valen plus Ripper. I think I would pick Valen pretty much every single time, because being able to turn the opponent's monsters face down is incredibly powerful. Valen can not only be summoned during your opponent's first turn to turn something face down, stopping their combo line, but on top of that, you can also then, after your opponent sets up their board, before you make any plays on your turn, you could target another monster to turn face down that would pose a threat to your board, whether it be a negate or a floodgate, so on and so forth. And yeah, your opponent will likely just negate that effect, but still, Valen can not only halt your opponent's plays, but also weaken the impact of their end board into your plays. The Ripper ability to negate an effect in the hand or graveyard is obviously quite strong. It can stop hand traps that your opponent's going to try to use on your turn, or graveyard effects that might trigger during your turn as they're sending their stuff to the graveyard. One thing that's also really important to note is that Izuna activates if your opponent has activated a hand or activated a monster effect in the hand or graveyard, and Ripper negates the effect, not the activation. Meaning that if you use Ripper to negate the effect, then the effect has still activated, so Izuna will still be live, meaning these cards still play very well with one another. Tiras, as mentioned, serves the sort of towers sort of effect, where, again, when summoned with Lupus, it cannot be destroyed by card effects per its own effect, and while it has Lupus as a material, it cannot be targeted either. That, combined with its 2600 attack points, makes it pretty formidable. And on top of that, you also have the ability to destroy cards if Tiras battles. So again, you'll be picking typically between 2 of these 3 when it comes to the extra deck monsters for your Izuna hand trap engine. And like I said, I'm partial to Valen and Ripper. I think they have the highest impact. Tiras is quite good in certain matchups though, like Mitsurugi, for example, is a matchup where you have a bit of a time, or they have a bit of a time rather, trying to out your Tiras, but generally speaking, I would prefer Valen and Ripper, personally. There are other rank 5 options you could explore, maybe depending on what kind of a deck you're playing, you might want another one, but I think these are going to be the 2 primary ones, or 3 rather, primary ones here. One of the biggest changes that Izuna has made to the current metagame is it's really affecting how players are looking at their current hand trap lineup, right? Not only are they looking to include Izuna to use as a hand trap on your opponent's turn 1, but because Izuna can activate when a monster effect in the hand is activated, that's really going to affect what hand traps you're going to play in anticipation of your opponent's Izuna as well, right? For example, the big sort of comparison you can make is Effect Veiler versus Infinite Impermanence, right? Whereas they both negate monster effects, the Effect Veiler will trigger the Izuna, whereas the Imperm will not. So, not only are you looking ideally to play hand traps that are actual trap cards, but if you are going to play hand traps that are monster cards, you really want to be looking at ones that are going to be higher impact. Good examples of this would be Maxi and the Molcharmi cards like Fuelos and Perulia. Molcharmi Perulia is especially worth mentioning because it triggers when monsters are summoned from the hand, and this can include K9-17 Izuna. Perulia is really good against the K9, engine in general, but even Izuna as a hand trap, the Perulia will at least cycle for 1 card. Of course, Fuelos will also cycle when they summon from the extra deck, and I don't really think Maxi needs any introduction. Now, there are some other monster effect hand traps that I consider to be high impact, particularly Droll and Lockbird, as well as Nibiru, the Primal Being. Droll and Lockbird is especially good against the K9 deck in particular, because if you Droll and then, your opponent has Izuna and they summon it, they could go into Ripper, but then they won't be able to add anything, right? Either that or they'll go into something like Valen and then not be able to advance their combo line, as Valen doesn't naturally allow for that. So Droll and Lockbird, like I said, does end up being really good, not only against K9 in general, but of course a lot of decks in this metagame, including a lot of the ones that are playing the Izuna. On top of that, we have the Nibiru too. Now granted, I will say that Nibiru's a little bit weaker into K9, both as an engine and particularly as a hand trap if they have the Ripper, because of the Ripper's ability to negate monster effects in the hand. However, the thing is that you'll be dropping the Nibiru a lot of the time before the Izuna. I mean, if it's the only monster effect hand trap in your hand, certainly that'll be the case. And if that's the case, then yeah, they'll be able to make a rank 5 after the Nibiru, but their board obviously will be much weaker for it. And you're in an even better situation if they end up making they're summoning the Izuna before you nib, because then you can Nibiru. Honestly, I would even wait for in response to Lupus's effect if it's your turn, although you won't be Nibiruing on your turn very often. So in that regard, you could just wait until the Izuna and Lupus are both on the field, right? Then you could Nibiru. Of course, I mean, that's going to depend situation to situation. I'm just talking about Nibiru versus Izuna specifically. But yeah, so these are monster hand traps that, again, I consider to be high impact. And if they're high impact, then I do think it is still worth playing them into Izuna. What I would consider to be a low impact, hand trap is one that doesn't have a huge effect, like a lingering effect, like the Molcharmis or Droll. Or while Nibiru doesn't have a lingering effect, it completely wipes the board. That's obviously going to be hugely impactful. Whereas something like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring is only going to stop a single card. So that's not quite as high impact. That said, I think Ash Blossom is still quite good right now. Obviously because it is still very useful against the Molcharmis and Maxi. But on top of that, you could also Ash Blossom Izuna's effect to dump Lupus, thereby stopping them from going into the rank 5. And Ash Blossom isn't the only Ghost Girl. Ghost Spell and Haunted Mansion can stop the Lupus from reviving from the graveyard. And then there's also the Ghost Ogre. Ghost Ogre can be used during your turn when Lupus activates its effect on the field, and that will destroy the Lupus, and then they won't be able to make a rank 5. So even though these Ghost Girls are, again, quote-unquote lower impact, they are still going to be quite good against the Izuna. Now, as mentioned before, there are also some actual hand trap cards. They're not all just monster effects, and those are obviously going to be quite good into Izuna because Izuna can only be triggered by a monster effect. If you activate a trap card from hand, that will not activate the Izuna. For this reason, Infinite Impermanence, as well as the Dominus trap cards like Impulse and... oh my god, I'm blanking on the other one. Impulse and Purge, of course. Then those are going to be quite good because then they won't get to activate the Izuna effect. Now, the weakness here is obviously going to be for the Dominus trap cards. There are only so many different kinds of decks you can play those in, so they're not going to be, you know, showing up quite as often, or maybe at all, again, depending on what decks you play. And Imperm, I mean, it's weaker than Valor in that you have to have no cards in the field, but also Valor can only be used on your opponent's turn, whereas Imperm can be used on yours. But that said, Imperm being a trap card is obviously going to be the tiebreaker here. But it's not just the hand trap lineup that Izuna is affecting in the current metagame. It's also making certain matchups better or worse depending on how reliant those matchups are on activating card effects in the hand. You might have heard before that the Justice Hunters archetypes are a sort of like, they have a bit of a rock, paper, scissors triangle going on, right? Where K9 has a good matchup against Dracotail, it has a bad matchup against Yummy, and then of course Yummy has a good matchup against K9, but a bad matchup against Dracotail, where Draco has a favored matchup against Yummy, it is unfavored against K9. And Izuna is a large part of the reason for this triangle. Not the only reason, but a significant part of it, right? Because think about it. On the Dracotail side of things, you have Dracotail Phimena, a monster effect that activates in the hand. And if Dracotail's game plan is going according to plan, then they're going to be activating Phimena during every single turn, both theirs and their opponents. But that also means that Izuna is going to be live during every single turn. And with the ability to go into Ripper as well, which can negate effects in the hand, that also has a lot of potential to stop the Dracotail Phimena from resolving. And there are a fair number of Dracotail hands where Phimena doesn't resolve, their plays don't get going at all, making K9 inherently advantageous to play against Dracotail. However, the same can't necessarily always be said for Yummy, because Yummy actually can get away without special summoning or activating any monster effects from the hand a lot of the time. The only real exception to this is Marshmallow. That effect to special summon from hand does activate, and that will trigger Izuna. So if you're making Yummy combos and you open a Marshmallow, you should be very mindful of that. I've had a lot of Yummy games where I'll begin with a Marshmallow and I'll just normal summon it, so that way I'm not making my opponent's Izuna alive. But the other Yummy monsters like Cupsy and Cookie and Lollipo, those don't actually activate when they special summon from hand. They just kind of do it. They just summon right onto the field, right? So that is how the Yummy matchup does actually end up being pretty favored for you a lot of the time. Not only that, but if, for example, K9 does get to go into Valen, right? While that can be very good against Yummy's first summon, again, while you typically don't want to lead with special summon Marshmallow, if you try to use something like Valen while the Yummy opponent has Snatchy and another Yummy monster on the field, they can just dodge, right, by using the quick synchro effect. Or there's also the Yummy Surprise. They could potentially bounce whatever you're targeting and then a card on your field. So Yummy does have a lot of ways to dodge the Valen, and Ripper, again, is not going to come up a lot outside of exactly the Yummy Marshmallow. So you can see, again, how Izuna is not only affecting, you know, the off engine, but also which engines in and of themselves are doing better or worse in this meta. And we're seeing that on ladder right now, right? If you've been playing ranked ladder a significant amount of time since the new release, and you've been seeing a lot of K9 decks, you've probably not been seeing as many Dracotail decks. But Yummy is actually on the rise from the previous meta, and if we look at this analysis, it now makes a lot of sense. Whereas before it was just Dracotail and Yummy didn't really have as much ability to challenge Dracotail. Now K9 is the newest deck, making it the most popular, because the newest decks are always going to be the most popular ones. And as a result, now Dracotail isn't doing as well, but again, Yummy tends to be a lot more favored. Alright, hopefully you found some of the information in this video helpful. This is just kind of, again, me loosely talking about how much a single card has impacted the meta. I haven't really made a ton of videos like this in the past, so hopefully you enjoyed, and definitely let me know in the comments below if you found this information helpful, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, I'll definitely make sure that we talk more about you know, a single card or even an engine's impact on the meta. But again, that's going to go ahead and do it for now. Thank you, as always, for watching till the very end. Let's go ahead and give an extra special thanks to our YouTube members and Patreon subscribers. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which, by the way, is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.